Hello and welcome to round 6 of Grand Prix Denver. I'm Ben Swartz, straight here in the booth by Marshall Sutcliffe, and we've got quite the match for you guys. Tomoharu Saito on the left-hand side of your screen, facing off against Paulo Vitor Damaso on the right-hand side of your screen. What are these guys playing, Marshall?
Well, so this is interesting. You can see one of the top cards on Paulo's hand is Emrakul the Aeon Storm. So as you can see, he's trying to do some pretty crazy stuff. Now, Emrakul does get play in a few different decks, but the main one is Show and Tell, and that's what we have Paulo on here. He's also playing Sneak Attack in the deck, so he has multiple ways to cheat in Emrakul. He's also playing another huge fatty with Griselbrand.
Yep.
Now, on the other side of the table, we have a more straightforward deck, a deck that's been around for, at least in Legacy terms, quite a long time, and it still manages to top 8 and even win occasional tournaments, which is Rug Delver. I think that Tomoharu Saito is going to have a really, like, this seems like the type of deck that he's going to be extremely good at playing. Right. And once he figures out what Paulo's on, he'll have the ability to disrupt him quite a bit. Now, if Paulo can get one of his huge creatures in play, though, that'll probably be the end of the game.
Yeah, so basically it's a race to the finish. Can Paulo get a huge creature in play before Tomoharu Saito can disrupt him and attack him with cards like Delver of Secrets or Tarmogoyf for Nimble Mongoose?
Right.
So like I was saying in the pregame, this is the current classic, I guess, Legacy matchup. The Show and Tell deck versus the aggro control deck, the Delver deck.
Now this is...
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say this is really interesting because right away we have an interesting decision for Saito. Paulo's led with a volcanic island, and Saito had to decide if he wanted to crack his fetch land. If he does, he leaves himself open to not be able to cast the Daze that's in his hand, you know, by returning an island to his hand, and Paulo could resolve something like a Brainstorm or something like that. Now, I mean, Saito decided, yeah, there's probably nothing that's really that critical right here, so it's not a big deal. But Legacy gets compacted that densely, where like deciding when to crack your fetch land actually becomes a relevant decision.
I mean, also the only card Tomoharu Saito has seen out of PV has been that Volcanic Island. It could be very, very easy for him to be on the same deck as Tomoharu Saito and have Stifle.
That's right.
So maybe he wanted to wait a turn to crack that fetch land.
And maybe he was regretting not cracking it immediately. You know, you just never know. All right, so Saito still on end step does a Thought Scour. Now that's going to tip his hand to Paulo about what Paulo's up against. And that's going to give Paulo some pretty relevant information about what to play around here. It looks like a Brainstorm on the main phase for Tomoharu Saito. He has no pressure right now, so he's going to be looking for a way to get that. He's also got a Wooded Foothills on the battlefield, so he's going to be able to shuffle away whatever 2 cards he doesn't want from his hand. And as you were mentioned earlier, Ben, it starts to approach, you know, Ancestral Recall levels of value when you start shuffling away irrelevant cards.
Yeah, especially if Saito knew what Paulo were playing in this tournament, then Tomoharu Saito could shuffle away that Forkable, right, which is pretty irrelevant against Paulo's deck.
It's just that, yeah, so at some point, it's going to become clear to Tomoharu Saito what PV's on. That might not be the case right now. He might know. Sometimes at these tournaments, you know, somebody will tell you or whatever, but usually you don't know this early.
So that Brainstorm finishes resolving, and Saito is holding on to that Forkable.
So he might still think that his opponent, you know, could have a Delver of Secrets, or
he's hedging a little bit, right?
Yeah. Also, Forkable can just go to a play, so it is damage if he feels like the way that he's going to win this game is by burning out Paulo. Now, Saito does have a Force of Will in his hand. I also see that he's got he does not crack his fetch this time. He's got a Ponder. I think that's what he's going to play here. Again, I think he has 1 Tarmogoyf in hand. So he's going to play Wooded Foothills first and crack the other one.
Oh, sorry. You're 20. I'm 18.
Players just wanted to make sure their life totals were set.
I don't follow my pressure. Sorry.
Then, after that fetch land getting cracked, Saito is going to cast Tarmogoyf, which currently looks to be a 3-4 or 2-3. Is that a?
He's got instant land.
I can't tell if he milled a sorcery with that Thought Scour.
I don't think he did. I think it's Brainstorm, Thought Scour, Lightning Bolt, Daze. Okay. So 2-3 right now. All right, now there's a Lotus Petal. So Paulo now has the critical 3 mana needed for a card like Show and Tell, and he also plays Ancient Tomb, which also gets into 3 mana. It leaves him 2 extra mana to pay for a card like Spell Pierce or Daze, or even 2 Dazes.
Yep. If you're Saito here, you're almost definitely force willing, right?
Yeah. So he's right now is going to go ahead and play Show and Tell. He can pay for a Daze and not even have to crack his Lotus Petal. So yeah, it just feels like a Force of Will is coming. Although is that in fact?
Yeah, he's got Force of Will, Ponder, Daze, and Spell Pierce.
And Spell Pierce. So if he wants, he can make Paulo use up the Lotus Petal by burning his Daze. He can basically trade, not Daze, Spell Pierce for Lotus Petal if he feels like Paulo having that mana later might be relevant or not.
Saito's thinking about it. He's picking up that Wooded Foothills.
Yeah, he can also just Force of Will and just call it good there. Now Paulo also though could easily have. I mean, he can tap out Paulo if he goes for the Spell Pierce first, which that seems relevant here, as Paulo could easily have Spell Pierce of his own.
And he does.
So we were talking about these dense interactions, and this is one of them. You mentioned before, Ben, that to anticipate some type of a
so Saito is
counter war, and that's what we have here, and he does in fact do it, and then he's going to Daze, and it does get Daze. So Saito this way keeps he does use up 2 cards just like he would have if he Force of Willed, but this way he plays around Paulo's counter spells. He also gets a bunch of stuff in the graveyard, including an artifact and a sorcery.
Yeah, so that Tarmogoyf's a 4/5 now.
Yeah. And Saito's going to Ponder here. Where's Saito's other land?
Saito has Volcanic and a Tropical Island.
All right, he returned it with Daze. Okay.
So Ponder is going to draw Saito a Ponder. Jerry. It's going to replay his Tropical Island, attacking with Tarmogoyf, dropping Paulo down to 14. Jerry. After combat, maybe cast another Ponder. He wants to keep a blue card in his hand to use that Force of Will. This is one of the shortcomings of the sneak attack Show and Tell decks, is that you go in for this big turn, and if they've got a number of counterspells and you don't have any protection, now you have to build back from square one.
That's right.
I guess square two if you've got a Fatty or an Omniscience or whatever
which is what Paulo has. He's got Grizzlebrand and a bunch of lands in his hand from what I can see, so he's in not a great position.
Draw a City of Traders.
Fetch land, go. He's got 5 mana at his disposal right now, but I don't think, is his deck even capable of hard casting Grizzlebrand? It doesn't have access to 4 black, right?
I mean, barely capable.
I know he could just go like Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal,
yeah,
but like
that's the only way.
Okay.
It can get close to casting Emrakul.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's also very, very unlikely. You do need all 4 Lotus Petals to cast Grizzlebrand. There's no black sources of mana besides Lotus Petal.
All right, so that's going to be stranded in his hand currently. By the way, I see there's a very large crowd now forming around our feature match area, which is, it's interesting because that doesn't usually happen this early in the tournament.
I mean, it's the return of Saito.
It is. Another Ponder here for Saito.
Okay.
And he's going to shuffle these ones away. So Saito's got a Delver in his hand now as well.
So that's what he drew for this turn. Ponder is going to net him a Wasteland. That's really good because he can take out one of Paulo's lands while casting that Delver post-combat. And I believe I saw him have a Thought Scour, so he still has... maybe use the Thought Scour, so he's not going to cast Delver. He wants to hold Force of Will back.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got plenty of pressure right now with the Tarmogoyf. Paulo doesn't really have any way to interact with Tarmogoyf in his deck other than just make something way bigger and way scarier. Also, once he gets Paulo below 8 life, it takes away the ability for him to activate that Grizzlebrand when he casts it, which is part of the appeal to Grizzlebrand and Legacy, is that you can cast it and have free counterspell protection that same turn.
So Paulo here brainstorms. He brainstorms into 3 perfect cards: Emrakul, Show and Tell, and Ancient Tomb.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he doesn't know that Saito has access to Force Will, so he can cast Show and Tell this turn for either Emrakul or Grizzlebrand. Probably Grizzlebrand right now.
And can he do that and have Spell Pierce up? He can, right?
Spell Pierce mana up, or
Yeah. Not to pay for it, but like to play it.
Yes, if he has a Spell Pierce name, but I don't think he does.
Okay. Because we thought he did before, right?
I don't remember seeing a Spell
Oh,
Pierce.
okay, that was just side of that. All right, I misunderstood what you said.
I was saying Spell Pierce was in Paulo's deck.
For some named
In his deck,
John,
okay.
Jimmy John's is coming through sandwiches. Someone named John, your sandwiches has never made registration.
You see Paulo, he's very thorough in this way. He'll do the math. He plays relatively quickly, but he will also take his time when he needs to just to make sure that he's playing technically correct. He puts 2 lands back on top. He is going to play the Ancient Tomb, and he's just going to pass a turn back.
It's really interesting on a couple of different levels.
So,
I mean, first he played Ancient Tomb instead of City of Traders, so his plan is to play City of Traders the following turn.
right, so that gets him more mana. Because City of Traders, otherwise he'd have to sack it.
Right, but he gets the same amount of mana either way, and he's likely going to die in a couple turns, right, or be unable to win past a couple
There goes
turns.
Shaman.
Yeah.
16. Oh, yeah.
And if he taps Ancient Tomb for mana, he's removing a turn off his clock.
You see that Saito has drawn a second Force of Will, but he's just going to lead off with an attack here.
Yep. So Paulo drops to 6 life after the attack from the 4-power Tarmogoyf. And Saito is likely going to play that Wasteland and get rid of the Ancient Tomb. Maybe now he'll cast that Delver because of the second Force Will that he drew.
He can also dome his opponent with Forked Bolt, bringing him to 4 and making that Tarmogoyf by itself lethal next turn.
Yep.
He can also wait to do it next turn to kind of hide that fact. Oh, he's going to take away the red source from
Interesting.
Paulo. He must figure that if Paulo, because right now Paulo's sitting at virtual 3, and he must think that Paulo doesn't want to go to 3 because of Lightning Bolt. Yeah, he's going to leave up his red mana source, because if Paulo taps that Ancient Tomb and uses his Misty Rainforest, then he opens himself up to a Lightning Bolt, and Saito's definitely representing a Lightning Bolt here from Paulo's side.
That's easier.
Paulo looked through Saito's library or graveyard and saw that there was, I think, 1 milled away.
Yeah, 1 Lightning Bolt.
So he knows he plays it in the deck. I would assume that anyway, but knows for sure. So
Well, I mean, unfortunately, or
he just doesn't
fortunately
have a choice
for
right?
Paulo, right? He doesn't. If Saito has Lightning Bolt and he needs to tap that Ancient Tomb, he's dead either way.
Yep. Ooh, drew a red source anyway, but it's not relevant.
Well, I mean, he put that red source back from Brainstorm.
Oh yeah, right.
He decided
But-
not to crack the Misty Rainforest, but Show and Tell is going to get countered by Force of Will, and I mean, technically Paulo has 1 more turn because Saito's only threatening 5 points of damage.
Yeah, but really Saito also now has lethal on board, but also had the Forked Bolt too.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Saito is able to just have enough to keep PV off of his combo and keep Grizzlebrand and or Emrakul off of the battlefield.
These players head on to their sideboards.
We see Kibler versus Jerry Thompson there in our other feature match. So we've got some awesome players in the feature match area right now.
10, 15.
You think Kibler's on Maverick?
No.
What do you think he's playing?
15.
I remember at the last Legacy tournament he played in, he played some like Vantage deck because he can't get away from the green cards,
Yeah.
even though they're not as powerful as they used to be. He might have changed altogether because he didn't have such great success at that last event.
For those of you just tuning in, this is round 6 here from Denver. Getting a look at the feature match area here. Our main feature match there is Paulo Vitor Damagosa versus Tomoharu Saito. And in the other one, we have Jerry Thompson versus Brian Kibler. Right now, Saito is up a game on PV. PV's playing Show and Tell. He's playing Sneak and Show.
Yeah, Attack of the Show, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they have different names in Legacy. Sometimes they're kind of wacky. This one actually makes a fair bit of sense. Sneak and Show is kind of a clever way to say the 2 main cards in the deck. He's trying to get a Grizzlebrand or an Emrakul into play much cheaper and much earlier than you would normally have it. On the other side is Saito. He's playing Rug Delver, blue, red, green Delver, and he's basically trying to create some type of steady pressure through an early creature threat with a Nimble Mongoose, a Delver of Secrets, or a Tarmogoyf, and back that up by disruption in the form of counter spells and land destruction. He's up a game right now. He was able to do just that, prevent PV from resolving 2 different show and tells, both of which would have resulted in either an Emrakul or a Griselbrand entering the battlefield.
Twitter?
Yeah, so looking at these players' sideboards, the important cards for Paulo are ways to fight the counter magic and the quick starts of Saito's deck. So that includes cards like Red Elemental Blast, Pyroblast,
It's just what it always been.
Blue Elemental Blast maybe, and Hydro Blast for opposing
Like, I literally
Red
never
Elemental
used
Blast.
Twitter, and then they asked me to
Pyroblasts.
use for the judge feed.
Maybe
It's a lot of blast.
So,
maybe a Blood Moon? Probably not.
Blood Moon versus Saito.
Yeah.
yesterday going,
I mean, it leaves his burn open. It doesn't leave much else open, and he does play almost all non-basics, like maybe even just all non-basics.
Yeah, if he can get if Paulo can get that Blood Moon out quick enough, then it'd be effective. But I don't see it being effective if he casts it on any turn past turn 2.
Yeah, that's the problem with it, is that if Saito has either a Transformed Delver or a Tarmogoyf already on the table, that Blood Moon's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it keeps him off of most of his counter magic, but even then, his dazes and his forces, he doesn't need blue mana to cast. Actually, with the daze, you can't return it anymore, right? Because it's a mountain.
I believe so.
Yeah, so it does leave his forces open
so
still.
nothing happens.
From Saito's side, he's going to try boarding in a little
Suppose
bit
I
more
could've
counter
played it
magic in
out
the form
for
of Spell Pierce and Red Elemental Blast.
That's just
have a game.
demoralizing.
But there's not too much else. It's not like he's got enchantment removal that he can bring in.
Right.
But he's got quite a bit to board out, right? The Fork Bolts
Bolts are out
and the
for
Lightning
sure.
Bolts are not great.
Yeah, the lightning bolts are not unreasonable, but he could probably do quite a bit better out of his board.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
There's a version of this deck that plays Snapcaster Mage, but I don't think that Saito's on that one.
Nope, he does not have Snapcaster.
Looks like the. Oh, let's take a quick look over at Brian Kibler versus Jerry Thompson here.
Play has started.
Looks like Kibler's on the bug deck.
Yeah, he is. And Jerry's played a turn 1 or suspended a turn 1 Ancestral Visions.
Also,
That keeps ticking down until he can draw 3 cards. And
Ooh.
a turn 2 Sylvan Library for Brian Kibler. So this is already in game 3. The players have played fast. It's been might be a quick match for the two.
All right, we see the time ticking down as another suspend counter comes off of Ancestral Vision. Those are the type of cards that can blow these type of matches just out of the water.
Well, yeah, like we were saying earlier, the bug decks are 1-for-1 type decks.
Or 2-for-1 in this
right.
case, as a Hymn to Turok comes down for Jerry.
Slowly gaining card advantage. Ancestral Visions
Sure.
is just so powerful, a 3-for-1.
Seal event players, your pairings for round 3 are up. Seal event players, your pairings for round 3 are up.
Oh, Lingering Souls and a Vendilion Click. That's not too bad to have Lingering Souls be one of the cards that you lose. And he's going to get an activation off of his Sylvan Library here.
Okay, so it looks like we're going to head back to the Tomoharu Saito versus Paulo Vitor Damarosa match.
Yep, we'll come back to this one if they're still going.
And turn 1 Delver for Tomoharu Saito. Just a couple of lands for Paulo.
You see he has a Sneak Attack in his hand along with a Force of Will and a Spell Pierce plus City of Traders.
Yeah, no big creature though, just the sneak attack at
Yep.
this time. But does have that Brainstorm that he's likely going to cast it in a turn.
In fact, he looks like he's going to do it with Ponder on the stack.
But he's going to
Oh, he's just gonna Spell Pierce
the
it,
Ponder.
okay.
Interesting that Saito didn't want to do something to disrupt that Spell Pierce. I guess it doesn't really matter. That Ponder's not too important. I mean, it's
No.
pretty important in the sense that he can flip his Delver or transform his Delver on the following turn.
Yeah, I think that was his main thing. And also it looks like he's just got another one
Fair enough.
in his pocket here, so he's not too worried about it.
Mulling through his options. Looks like he is going to shuffle. I don't think there are any instants or sorceries on the top of Saito's deck.
Okay.
Which is what he wanted.
doesn't want to have that
Yeah.
Delver sitting there untransformed forever.
Especially because having a quick clock against the combo decks is really important. If you can disrupt them for just 1 or 2 turns, while attacking them for 3 or even 4 as we saw last game.
That's right.
That will end the game quickly.
Yeah, and a 3-2 flyer is going to do it.
Yep, thank you.
All right, he draws a card for Ponder, and it resolves.
Attacks in for 1 with his Delver. Paulo goes to his turn, draws a second Brainstorm. He's going to snap off Brainstorm really quickly here, drawing Petal, Misty Rainforest, and Ponder. So Paulo's likely going to put a land and a Petal back on the top of his library.
It's like what he's doing.
Shuffle and cast that Ponder. This is where the combo player really has to map out their following turns, try to find the highest probability play of them winning. You know, if I put these cards back and then I cast Ponder, here are my chances of drawing the cards I need. Right now he needs a big creature, either an Emrakul or a Gristlebrand, so he can sneak attack them in.
That's right, and you know, it's interesting because while he's not actually under a very big clock right now, it's just a 1/1 Delver of Secrets. That can get turned up pretty quickly, but still, Paulo's sitting at 19. He's not really under that much pressure.
18
So
now, thanks to the Scalding Tarn getting correct.
Yeah. So the question actually for him becomes like, the speed is relevant to how many draw steps he lets Saito have to try to hit things to get him. And interestingly, we see the PVs going for fetching for basic islands here. He doesn't want to get
Wastelanded.
right.
So Ponder looks at Force of Will, Lotus Petal, and Caracas.
And he's going to shuffle those away. Again, like you mentioned, Ben, he's digging. He's looking for a big creature so that he can eventually get his sneak attack going. And none of those were that, so he just said, nope, we're done. Next. And he's going to draw a card, see what he hits here.
Volcanic Island.
Volcanic Island. Who's this guy?
Players in the Legacy Rebound Tournament.
Force of Will is revealed off the top of the deck. Saito transforms his Delver Secrets into an Insectile Aberration. Draws the Force of Will. That's such a power play.
It really is.
It's like the standard Delver deck's flipping Mana Leak,
It is.
but a million times better because it's Force of Will.
Yeah, and it's tough to be in PVC when you know that that's coming. And he's got one Force of Will of his own, but there's another Force of Will in Saito's. And Saito doesn't really need to do too much here.
He'll cast a Tarmogoyf.
He's going to cast a Tarmogoyf. It's a 3.
3/4.
Yeah, 3/4.
Ponder drawn for Paulo.
So more momentum. He can keep just dig here, but
He's now under pressure. He now has a clock, right?
that's right. And a fairly significant one.
3-turn clock.
Yeah, and realistically, it's a 2-turn clock.
So I see the 3 cards from Ponder. It's a Ponder, Spell Pierce, and Ancient Tomb. I think the chances that Paulo shuffles this away are very, very high.
Yeah, it seems like he really does need to find something huge to cheat in, and he hasn't found it yet.
I guess he could draw the Spell Pierce, crack his fetch land, something like that.
Sure.
It looks like he's keeping it, and he's going to draw Ponder.
Draw Ponder, yeah.
So he can crack his fetch land, Ponder again.
I mean, he's seen a lot of cards in the last 2 turns, and might just want to see more.
I mean, he has to see more to try to find a large creature.
I mean, but he still has the problem of trying to resolve that sneak attack as well. So he needs to find some action here.
Now, Paulo only has 2 islands in his deck. So the next land he is going to go fetch has to be either, if he wants to be a basic, has to be a mountain or a volcanic island. And he will get a volcanic island here. He has 2 more blue spells in his hand that he wants to try to cast soon. And Paulo is going to Ponder. Ponder reveals...
There's an Emrakul.
Emrakul, Ancient Tomb. Couldn't tell what that last card was. A Sensei's Divining Top, maybe? It is a Sensei's Divining Top.
All right, well, this is a lot more promising than what he's been hitting with his Ponders and Brainstorms earlier. So he's going to be keeping.
And then put top on top. So he draws top and then can cast it. Yep. Play Volcanic Island, play top. Probably pass the turn to Saito. So Saito is going to untap with 6 power at his disposal. Tarmogoyf is still a 3/4, instant, sorcery, and land. A second Tarmogoyf drop for Saito to go along with the counter magic that he already has in his hand.
Yeah, it just seems like he has such. He's got 2 dazes and a force.
Yep, Tarmogoyf comes down for Saito, and he's going to Kraken for 6. Paulo's going to drop down to 8.
So this puts Paulo dead next turn just as the board sits, like no other spells needed
Yeah.
for Saito. So there's a lot of pressure here as Paulo really needs to find a way to go off. In this next turn, he's also got to be really careful here for Thought Scour.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to put your Emrakul on top and then have him Thought Scour you. Like maybe you even play the mental game where you put him 3 down.
Well, you have to know that Saito has Thought Scour there.
Yeah, you can also use your top. Well, he Thought Scoured in game 1.
Right, no, I mean in Saito's hand.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right, it's kind of a big bet that you have to make.
Yeah, he also has the top, so if Saito Thought Scours targets him, he can
Just draw it.
Yeah.
So Paulo draws that Emrakul. We'll play City
All
of Traders. 4 mana. His sneak attack. What does Saito have to say about this?
Well, looks like his only option is just to force a will here, right?
He can daze it first.
But then it just pays.
Right, that's important because it forces Paulo to tap down that island so that Paulo can't Spell Pierce and put a guy into play.
Okay.
So if you're Saito, likely daze for free here. Oh, he's going to Force Will first.
Yeah. He's going to hang on to days.
I mean, that's right. I guess Saito can pay for Spell Pierce, but if it were something else, if it were like a Dispel, I guess that's pretty outrageous to have.
All right, so force a will for Paulo. Right back at you. Drops him down to 7. And I think Saito's thinking, but
Yep.
Daze doesn't do it here. And I think we're going to see Uncle Emrakul visit. Now, interestingly, Saito does have 7 permanents, so he will get to keep something, likely a Tarmogoyf. Also, you don't get the ability, right, from Emrakul. So
You don't get the extra turn ability.
right, so, you know, Paulo could just be dead here anyway. Like, sure, Emrakul's a pretty sweet blocker, but he can't actually attack him.
Yeah.
So it looks like Saito's in the driver's seat here.
Although Paulo does have that Gristlebrand on the top of his library.
Oh, he gets haste anyway, so he's going to have that, and then he's going to come back. So actually, no, Paulo's
Yeah.
in a reasonable position here.
So the only thing Saito
But he hasn't just won this game yet, though, right? Because Saito can have a Tarmogoyf and still crack back and have any type of bolt plus land or whatever.
right, but we know that the
Then
last
he's
card
just
in his
got
hand
a
is
daze,
Daze.
yeah.
So I don't think that Saito can win this game. I don't think there exists a combination of cards.
Okay. Because the best thing he can do is leave himself with some creature that's not going to be lethal, basically.
Yeah.
And then he needs to have burn spell that he can't cast. All right. So it looks like PV has.
Ooh, so PV's using the top because he wants to
And that,
hold that Daze in his hand.
Yeah, he's also tapped his mana,
And Emrakul.
and he's going to attack with Emrakul. That's going to leave a Tarmogoyf behind, and it's going to put Saito down to 3. And like you said, since Saito's last hand, since we know that Saito's last hand happens to be Daze, it looks like PV is going to pull this one out here. Tarmogoyf needs to have like a Planeswalker or something to get up to 7, right?
may I check?
Tribal. There's no enchantment, I don't think.
And Emrakul goes to the graveyard and shuffles in Paulo's graveyard to
So
his
Paulo
library.
still needs to find a way to finish him, right?
Yes.
Oh, and he just drew a Force of Will.
Wow.
So now all of a sudden, Tomoharu Saito looks like he's completely in the driver's seat.
So Paulo made an interesting decision there he decided to use the top to draw the days instead of using the top to draw the Gristlebrand to make sure that he would win the following turn.
All right, and Paulo just extends the hand because he couldn't find another creature. You know, you have to sacrifice the creature at the end of turn for Emrakul. And yeah.
Why didn't Paulo use top to get that Gristlebrand?
I didn't know there was a Gristlebrand. Plus, remember when Emrakul goes to your graveyard, it shuffles everything.
Your graveyard and your library. But he could use the top to draw the Gristlebrand and keep it in his hand. And then Emrakul
instead
would
of the
die.
days.
Yeah, instead of the days.
For Swan
I don't know.
Interesting play. But Tomoharu Saito wins round 6 here. 2-0 against Paulo Vitor Damarosa. And we'll see if we can catch the tail end of the Jerry Thompson on.
He might have forgot about the shuffle and just thought he was going to draw it next turn.
Yeah. Jerry Thompson versus Brian Kibler game. Abrupt Decay is going to take out a token,
And we come right in time for a handshake here. Which game was that?
That was game 3.
Okay.
You can hear the cackle of Brian Kibler.
He has a distinct laugh.
You have to keep it.
Maybe I should have ordered in parachutes.
And so Jerry ends up winning 2-1
Yep.
over
I wasn't really thinking about it. Then, like, you know,